Most brands think they have a Google Ads strategy, but when they increase their budget, everything just falls apart. They can't maintain the ROAS that they actually had and consistently profitably scale. And I want to tell you that's honestly just because of one reason. It's because your structure is fundamentally broken. And I see this in all of the accounts I audit. And in this video, I wanted to actually break down the strategy that we used for an e-commerce brand. Started up with us recently, but right now we're at $10,000 a month in spend with $50,000 in revenue generated at a 5x or so ROAS. And now we're really scaling this brand up to 20, 30, 50K in spend while maintaining a 3 to 5x return on ad spend because that's profitable for them. Okay. And I wanted to tell you about really the three main reasons as to why we're able to do this and how you can implement it for your brand as well to replicate that type of success. Reason number one is knowing your actual numbers. Now, I know that sounds super, super boring, but you need to understand the fact that you can't run ads without actually knowing what the numbers mean. Because again, what Google's always pushing and going to push you for is to get you a higher return on ad spend. Why? Because that's going to make them get you to spend more money. It's more convincing for you if you're seeing a 5, 10x ROAS like everybody's flashing. Again, I don't mean to be one of those people as well, but that's ultimately just going to push you to just keep pouring money, even if it's not profitable, right? And what I saw recently in an audit I did, $5,000 a month in spend into 2 PMAX campaigns, but all of this spend was branded because brand was not excluded, right? And if you're familiar, these people are actually searching your brand, which means that if you had an organic listing or a just search campaign on manual CPC where you're setting a bid limit, that would do more than enough to actually capture these people, and you don't have to pay inflated prices in PMAX, or even worse, think that you're actually doing prospecting where you're actually not, because again, PMAX is spending all that budget on branded terms, okay? And so that's something super, super common I see. So going back to the actual numbers. So there's 3 that I want you to focus on, super simple: average order value. Look at your past orders in, let's say, the last 365 days from your main traffic sources. What is your average order value? And from there, you can really backtrack how much can I afford to spend to actually get a conversion. And again, that's why with the strategy, we want to have a mix of branded and non-branded campaigns, because branded campaigns inevitably are going to get you that 10 to 20x return on ad spend if you have a solid brand already. Whereas with non-branded campaigns, we might see anywhere from a 3 to 5x return on ad spend when well optimized. Okay. And that's important where you have the equilibrium, because then looking at your investment into Google, you understand, okay, blended, I'm making enough money to actually cover whatever I'm spending. Okay. And so, yeah, if you can look at your average order value and say your average order value is $100, then you can afford a 3x return on ad spend because of your profit margins. Then you can say, okay, the highest blended cost per sale I can achieve in Google Ads is $33, right? If we want to get a 3x return on ad spend. And again, ideally, when you're around the $10,000 per month range, I find that's going to be the sweet spot, because you actually are spending enough to consistently get results. Whereas, when you're at 3 to 5K, it can be a little bit more volatile. You don't have enough data. And then from there, you will see some stability getting closer to $20, $30, $50,000 a month. Again, if your structure is proper, and then ROAS will go down, obviously, because you're tapping into a larger market where there's less addressable people that are actually ready to buy. That's what I want you to focus on. Think about AOV, think about your profit margins. And then the last one, think about your lifetime value. Okay, and this is a huge thing as well, because for a lot of brands, for example, I mentioned this on the channel, but we run a brand where we're really just pushing for sample sales, and that's the upfront offer, where ROAS on the front end might not be as high, but on the back end, because we're converting people across a 1, 2, 3 month cycle into actually a larger order, that's $600, $1,000, or even several $1,000s if it's a B2B type of project, that's where Google Ads actually comes into play. Right. So on the front end, your dashboard might actually lie to you, and you need to understand your numbers for that reason to know, okay, if I'm spending $50 to acquire a customer and the initial purchase is $120, for example, I can afford that because I know they're going to come back and buy another product, a supplementary product, or even better, I know that they're going to subscribe if you're more so a supplement brand, or that supports the logic of your business. So those are some numbers you really need to understand before you actually jump in and build your structure, because that's what we want to orient everything around. And then when we set our target return on ad spends, right, how aggressive we want to be, that also depends on your numbers, right? So because again, you're not feeding Google really typically with profit data, you're using its bidding strategies like target return on ad spend to actually understand based on your margins what you should set it at. And jumping into point 2, something I already touched on is distinguishing between branded and non-branded searches. Okay, and again, I really want to emphasize on this because a lot of people look at Google Ads and like I said, they think they have a 10, 15x ROAS and they're celebrating because their Google Ads are so profitable, but they wonder why their business actually isn't growing. And the real reason is that people people looking for your brand, again, are already ready to buy. They know about you. They're not particularly going to be new customers. They might be if it's the first time they're, again, purchasing from your brand and they haven't heard of you before, searching your actual brand. But these are low-hanging fruits, very easy to capture people. And on the other hand, again, if you want to grow your business with Google Ads, this is where you need to have shopping campaigns. This is where you have to have non-branded search campaigns. And again, we want to distinguish these very separately and have 80% of our budget pushed to actual non-branded searches and about 20% to capture brand. And again, that's going to give you the equilibrium to be able to invest back more into Google Ads. And again, if you take that example of the 2 PMAXs I mentioned at the start, if we do not have brand excluded, every time you increase budget, Google is just going to push more spend to your branded terms, causing you, again, to not grow your business, but just continue spending more. So that's why it's really important to have brand excluded from non-branded campaigns, and then non-branded terms obviously excluded from branded campaigns. And the 2 branded campaigns that we run are branded search and branded shopping. I'm going to show you some examples closer to the end of this video. So now diving into the more exciting part. Like I said, 80% of your budget should be going to non-branded campaigns. And what I like to run for this is a feed-only Performance Max campaign or a standard shopping campaign. Again, this is going to depend on the stage of your account, but what I like to do is almost like bug out PMax to not give it any assets. So as you might know, traditionally, Performance Max can serve on YouTube, display, Gmail, search, all of the different networks, but I want to leverage PMax's algorithmic capabilities, but only serve on the shopping network. And I find that it's more powerful than a standard shopping campaign because you can add in search themes, you can add in audience signals, like leverage your customer list, for example, all of the past data that you have in Shopify or whatever website provider you have to actually give that data to Google. It's almost like importing conversions, not to target them, but to, again, to give it insight. And it can leverage that very, very well. And I've seen it pick up accounts. In that screen share, I'm going to show you, we do that exact strategy where 70-80% of the budget is to this campaign. Brand is excluded. And the most important component here is that we've optimized the feed. And what does that mean? You might have seen this online, and I actually suggest you watch some of my other video tutorials on feed optimization to get a better understanding in a full structure of what it means. But to break it down in simple terms, it means giving Google very clear insight as to who you want to target, and you do that by having clear titles because your targeting is with your actual product titles largely. So if you actually want to target a certain type of keyword, you want to make sure that's at the start of the title, and then you also want to have your product types, you want to have your brand, you want to have maybe the capsules if you're a supplement brand, but you have 150 characters to use for these product titles, and you really want to make sure you use them strategically. And so that's where I typically recommend the feed optimization tool. Something I personally like to use is Data Feed Watch. I'm not affiliated with them, but that way you can optimize your titles. You can also add product types based on Google's product taxonomy. So that's a long sheet Google has. In terms of the actual product types it uses to match to your searchers. And again, you can get very, very specific, right? So that's the beauty of it. And again, the whole idea is providing Google with as much data as possible. I mentioned the titles. You also have descriptions, making sure you mention keywords that you want to target within those product descriptions, the product types, making sure that you also have product identifiers if you have UPC codes or manufacturer part numbers, making sure Google has those, custom labels to actually group products, because on the shopping or feed-only Performance Max side, you can have ad groups, but again, the way that you organize products, especially when you're 100 or several thousand SKU store, is with custom labels. So that's really going to be the targeting. And honestly, these 5 core components are what's going to actually get you results with shopping, get you lower CPCs. Because if you think about it, again, if you're making it very easy for Google to find the target type of searches you want to show up for, rather than having a one-word title like collagen, for example, that's what's actually going to get you those results and have cheap CPCs. And then again, also have a higher return on ad spend on the front end to a point where you can actually continue pushing spend. And again, you're making it very easy for it to understand who to target. Real quick, if you're already running Google Ads and you want to verify if your setup is correct, or you actually have the fundamental strategy to be able to scale to that next level, or again, also if you're just running into bottlenecks and not able to grow the spend, I'd love to take a look at your ad account, literally just dive in, give you a few pointers, look at what your competitor is doing, and really just give you some insight as to how to get to the next level. That's what I love to do. You can go to the link in the description and book a call with me. But back to the video, the other non-branded campaign that I like to run is a non-branded search campaign. A lot of people struggle to see results with this, and I actually will make a video on this as to why I see search campaigns not working fundamentally in 2026. What you typically want to do is be very selective with the terms you target. I wouldn't use phrase match. I would go exact match on 5 to 10 keywords that I really want to target. And again, if you're even running on a more limited budget where you're just starting out, or you just want to be super focused, I would actually push a lot more spend to shopping with brand excluded, because once you start to see terms converting and you start to get 30, 50 conversions for a specific term, you can declare that a winner, and then you can just create search campaigns dedicated to those specific terms. Again, you're going to see that 80% of the spend is going to like 20% of a group of searches. And then around those searches, based on what you see in your shopping campaigns, you want to create a search campaign to actually target those searchers, capture them, and convert them on another network. Let's say you search your target keyword. So let's say just collagen, that was already in my mind. There's going to be shopping results, and then there's going to be search results. So the idea as well is you want to dominate both placements, right? Because you're not competing with yourself. But on the other hand, the text ad might appeal more to somebody else, and then the shopping ads might appeal to another person as well, right? Or vice versa, right? You're increasing the likelihood that somebody actually goes through and clicks on your listing over a competitor if you dominate both placements. Okay, so 80% of the spend going to these two campaigns. And lastly, what we want to use the remaining spend for is, like I mentioned, brand campaigns. So there's two brand campaigns that we want to run. We want to run a branded search campaign using manual CPC. That way we can really control the bids so that Google isn't going out of control like it would with Performance Max, where you don't have bid limits and it can spend $10, $20 on your actual brand. We want to set 50 cent or $1 max CPCs. We want to run at a 20% of our daily budget at the max, really, just to capture these people that already have the intent to purchase, make sure our impression share. So of the searches of our brand, how many are we actually showing up for? We want that to be 8 to 9 out of 10, so 80 to 90% at least. And that way we know we're spending enough on brand to actually capture it. Because again, if you're in a highly competitive industry or somebody else is running Performance Max, chances are, not even intentionally, but accidentally, they could be showing their own brand for your brand because they're running super broad, like I said, with Performance Max. So you always want to make sure you protect yourself in any case to make sure you don't lose any of your potential customers that already wanted to buy from you to a competitor. Okay, and what we want to pair with that branded search campaign is a branded shopping campaign, which a lot of people don't really know how to set up properly. The way that we do that is with a high target return on ad spend, because again, if you're pushing Google to achieve a super high target return on ad spend without brand excluded, what's it going to go after? It's going to go after your branded searches, right? And that's exactly what we want to do for that campaign. Display products that you want to show for your actual own brand, instead of, again, if you do a test search of your own brand right now, audit the current setup and look at what's already showing up, right? Because what might be happening is, yes, you're covered on the text side where it's search results, but again, when you have the shopping listings where it's actually the carousel, you might see other brands, right? And that's how you really would fix this, is running a target return on ad spend, high target return on ad spend with campaign. I typically do at low priority with brand included, and then I'll exclude all of the non-branded terms that we're targeting in the feed only PMAX or the standard shopping campaign to make sure, again, that there's no conflict between the two. And one more side thing that I would do as well is a display campaign or a demand gen remarketing campaign, something that I've started experimenting with as well, just to retarget cart abandoners. Because again, depending on the price point of your product, if you're a little bit more on the premium side, starting at $300 or several $1,000s, or a high ticket store, people need to see your ads much more often to be able to convert, right? Because sometimes it'll take 5-10 touch points. They might not just come through Google ads, they might come through organic as well. So you want to make sure you're hitting them on every placement possible. Make sure that you actually are running some type of remarketing. Typically what I'll do is lowest hanging fruit is cart abandoners. So again, if somebody added a product to cart, but they didn't go through and purchase, we have that audience set up in analytics, import into Google ads, and then we target it in a specific display campaign, and we do dynamic remarketing. So we actually show them the product that they left in cart back to them, and that's the easiest people to reconvert. You can do the same thing on YouTube, but again, that's why I would run a demand gen campaign. If you've heard of it, I will be making more videos on that campaign type, but basically it allows you to hit all of Google's different placements, similar to Performance Max, but again, it's a little bit more either super bottom of funnel or top of funnel, and it's going to be bottom of funnel because we're only retargeting, right? We're only targeting cart abandoner audiences. That's the audience signal that we're using. Okay, now, so for the super exciting part, let's dive right into the screen share so I can show you an example. So breaking down the strategy, super simple. This is exactly what I talked about earlier in the video, but we have a few core campaigns. Again, 80% of the budget or so is focused on non-branded, and then we have some branded spend as well. We're running in 2 countries, so I'm just focused on US here, but what I want to focus on is the fact that most of our budget is to the feed only Performance Max campaign. And again, with this account, we're really focused on getting as cheap of a cost per order as possible, because on the back end, the goal is really LTV. and getting people to come back, which they're doing through email marketing and other initiatives as well. But on the Google ads, we're just profitably trying to get new customers through the door, even if ROAS is a little bit lower. If we're getting a customer that might result in a $600 or $1,000 purchase, we've won. So that's something to keep in mind, and goes back to that point I mentioned earlier about knowing your actual numbers. And then what we're doing on the other side, like I mentioned, a search campaign, right now it's paused because we're doing more development on the landing page side. And that's something you need to understand as well. If your search campaigns are not converting and you're targeting the right types of searches, there's a disconnect on the actual destination you're sending people on. Make sure you check on mobile and on desktop. Typically, I'll see a lot of issues on mobile, and a lot of traffic actually does come from mobile, and people visit you initially through that and might come back organically or through direct traffic on their desktop to actually purchase. So make sure that your setup is good. Right now, we're creating a standalone landing page to actually target and mention the offer that we have on the front end to push people to actual product pages. So making the flow of these search campaigns, these people that visit the actual site from these keywords, very, very simple and very, very clear. That's going to allow us to get better results than what we were previously seeing. And then in addition to that, something we're running, which I didn't mention, is a competitors campaign. Not going to touch on that too much here. What I talked about already in this video is a branded search and a branded shopping campaign as well, which, like I touched on in the video, we want to get CPCs as cheap as possible from the search side and maximize impression share. And on the shopping side, we have a super high target return on ad spend set so that Google can only spend on branded traffic. And the beauty of it is you're not going after clicks here. You just want the visibility, because it's more likely people are going to click on the search ad typically. But again, if you're getting impressions, you're not charged for it. You're charged when somebody actually clicks. So that's the beauty of this approach as well. It might not even spend the budget that you set, but super, super low budget here for that. And then we're doing a really minimal amount of remarketing. These clicks are super cheap. But again, we're just showing products that people actually added to cart from the feed only Performance Max campaign back to them to actually make sure they come back and purchase the product. Results really come from understanding your numbers, knowing how to distinguish branded from non-branded searches and segmenting that out, and how to protect yourself in the sense of your own brand, but also how to prospect and find new customers profitably to actually grow your business. And if you actually want assistance into getting to that next level, I'd be happy to audit your current Google Ads setup and really give you a roadmap as to how I would grow your account over the coming 30, 60, 90 days, not just to grow ROAS, but to actually grow your business. We can get started super, super quick. 1 week of onboarding with no long-term contracts. I really allow my results to speak for themselves. And that speaks to the tens of brands that I'm currently managing, averaging over a 4x return on ad spend. To get started, use that first link in the description, and I'll see you on the other side.